Hey, listeners and viewers. I am so excited that you are with us today because joining me in this episode is Robynne Esther. And Robynne is a teacher at Dalton School in Hong Kong, China. And she is an expert on inquiry-based learning in the classroom. So if you are a teacher who is looking for some amazing ideas, or even like you just want to touch base with inquiry-based learning, what is it? How could you implement it into your classroom? How can you use it to up-level your questioning techniques? This is the interview for you. All right, let's get into it. Robynne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Marisa. This is my first podcast, so I'm like, woohoo!
Uh,
Excited.
I love that. I love that. Well, it's really, really exciting. That makes me so excited. Okay, let's get straight into it because I know the teachers want to know, but what is inquiry-based learning?
Okay, so inquiry-based learning, or IBL, essentially is a approach to learning. It's an approach to learning, a 21st century approach. Essentially, what it is igniting, students' curiosity through a provocation. So getting their, thinking going, and then allowing them to create questions and wanderings around that provocation, and then allowing them to do research, and answer those wanderings, answer those provocations, and ultimately it ends up in some form of action taking. So it might be as simple as a poster or something as large as, a charity drive. So I want to give you an example. So I'm a grade 4 homeroom teacher, and for my grade 4s, we began our unit on dinosaurs last year.
Okay.
And how I kicked off the unit was with a provocation. So in different envelopes, I cut up pictures of different topics under dinosaurs. So I had one envelope with paleontologists, one with fossils, one with animals related to dinosaurs, and one with like an asteroid and volcanoes. Cut up those pictures, put them in the envelopes, put the students in groups, gave them each an envelope. We're like all excited. What's in these envelopes? You create this like mystery, this is provocation is something that's gonna like really fuel your unit, your inquiry. They
Right.
opened up envelopes and they put the pictures together, and they're seeing these pictures of, who are these people and an asteroid, and then we move into the next step of wanderings, creating questions around these images. What are these images? And sort of facilitating that process of wandering and question creation. um and essentially, now my students, so they created loads of questions. We sorted those questions, found out what were they really interested in and how to move forward. We embarked on research, even went on some experiential learning, went to the science museum, saw a dino exhibition. We had a live interview with a leading paleontologist in Hong Kong.
Um,
Um, and ultimately, it's going to result in a dinosaur museum. We're turning our classroom into a dino museum. Now, I think a lot of teachers are like, oh, whoa, that's like, I'm not sure if I can do that. But really, it's their interpretation of a dinosaur museum, right? It's just
yeah.
all their, it's accumulation of their work, in the classroom. And so that's basically inquiry-based learning. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. I want to ask you when the students are coming up with the questions around the pictures, do you get them to collaborate and write their questions on like a piece of paper or write them in their book or come up and decide like what are your two best questions? Let's put them on the whiteboard. How do they where do they put the questions?
So for this particular inquiry unit, I used a questioning framework called the Question Pencil by Trevor McKenzie,
Okay.
which is ultimately different question starters. And I got them to, they looked at the question starters like why, how, what, and they created questions using those questions starters and sorted their questions onto this like question pencil. I mean, you can look it up, Trevor McKenzie question pencil, and it will come up, so it'll make sense to you. But you could also do like a wonder wall, and you can just get them to do I wonder and just put on a post-it notes and put it all in one section. You could do a mind map also. So there's multiple ways that I've done it, but in this case, I use the question pencil.
I love that because I especially love giving the students the words to start the questions, because sometimes questions, like, students are limited with like why or how. And then if you give them a few other options, the thinking actually gets, the inquiry gets bigger and bigger. So I think that's a brilliant, brilliant idea for sure. And
100.
yeah. Robyn, why would you say, this is such a different form of teaching compared to even, gosh, 20 years ago, like within the last 20 to like 200
Mm.
years. Why is it so important in the world we're living in today to sort of embrace inquiry-based learning?
Okay, so what I really and truly believe is inquiry is like a framework for 21st century skills. 21st century skills are skills that we need today. So we're talking digital literacy, we're talking creativity, communication, collaboration, the list goes on. And inquiry allows students to, learn these skills. And these are skills they can take out into the real world.
Yeah.
I think inquiry is also so important today because inquiry touches on this idea of 100 languages. Have you heard about this idea of 100 languages?
No, tell me that.
Okay, so it's the 100 languages of children, and this is this idea that children learn in so many different ways, right? There's not just one way to learn.
Yeah.
So inquiry, because it is so broad and because it's transdisciplinary in terms of you can teach it across curriculum, really it provides students an opportunity to reflect on their own strengths and play into them, as well as, areas of development. So I think it's important because it provides students with an opportunity to identify their own strengths, play on those strengths, but also, also have an opportunity to grow in areas they need to. Inquiry also lends towards this idea of student agency.
Okay.
So really, yeah, really in inquiry, the idea is child-centered. So as you sort of move through the stages of inquiry, ultimately you get to this point where students are leading their learning. You know, they're totally leading, they're coming up with the way that they want to, showcase their learning, all of it. They're leading their research. So again, it's just this idea of, one day when they got into the real world, or even now at school, they enter competitions, they travel around the world, or they deal with day-to-day problems. That means they need to take the initiative. So I think inquiry is important because it provides students with real world skills. That's really, yeah.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with like the 21st century skills, right? It's because for things to change, like as rapidly as things are changing in the future, particularly with tech and AI,
Yeah.
children or people in general, it all starts with a question. It all starts with you create by starting with that inquiry, by starting with those questions. And the more you can learn how to hone that skill, the more I feel successful you will be moving forward, because you're just like, the world just kind of opens up to you because you have this, changing mind and this ability to ask questions instead of just memorize information and write a test, right? Which is going to get us absolutely nowhere. No, I love that. And so now that you've done this for a bit with your students, like what benefits have you seen in your students by using the inquiry-based method?
I think for me, what I've noticed is, first of all, engagement is high. So, you don't have to work so hard to create activities that engage your students. Because they're interested in what they're learning in, the engagement is there. So that's like, part of your job, especially as teachers, we're like entertainers essentially, but it just makes your job easier. So engagement is high. And then also I think students begin to realize that their voice matters.
Yes.
Because because they start to see their learning on the walls. They start to realize, that the teacher's going to listen to them. Even before, this dinosaur unit, we've done community, and my students said, oh, we want classroom jobs. Okay, So we'll do classroom jobs. And then I put out a box and I said to them, pop down any ideas you have throughout the day, anything that arises in the classroom that you could see could be a potential classroom job, pop it in the box, and that's something that we will look at and build together. And now we've got classroom jobs. So I think it's, that idea that students realize that their voice matters.
Mm.
Um, and I think that just goes so far. Because also builds their confidence in their learning as well, which students always say, oh, I can't do this, or this is too hard. But if they are confident in themselves, then even making a mistake is not that bad, because they know that they will learn from it, so definitely a huge benefit, just seeing students enjoying.
Yes, no, absolutely. I can imagine that would be the case. And I think also the fact, and I'm sure you've worked with students like this in the past before you maybe started with inquiry-based learning, just being scared to ask a question, right? Just that fear that comes. I don't know, I think it sort of starts in grade 5, grade 4, grade 5, where they start to get scared to ask questions. And this type of learning actually is like, well, everybody has to ask questions in order to learn, in order to make this work. And when everybody's asking questions, you don't feel so scared to ask questions, because that's the whole purpose of the activity, right? Have you noticed that that's gotten better?
Yes. I think also this whole idea of inquiry-based learning as an educator, or perhaps like a facilitator, as we move past this whole idea of like being like a teacher and more like a facilitator in education. Even for me, like I've been teaching inquiry for something like 8 years now. I've been in education for like 15 years. I've taught inquiry in terms of like IB. I'm now doing PBL with a grade 6. I'm doing inquiry with grade 4. And I run workshops and inquiry, but even with all of that experience, I'm still learning. So this inquiry, if you are, an educator who's teaching inquiry, it's going to be a journey. It's like almost like a lifelong journey, I would say, because every student is different, every unit is different, and you are going to make mistakes. So like if the students see me make mistakes, I'm like, oh, I'm still learning. I'm like, well,
Yeah,
there you go. I
love
went with
that.
you. Well, let's look it up together. So I've definitely seen that. I think it's up to us to create a safe environment where we are simply not perfect. It's just unrealistic to even consider that we live in a world where people, don't make mistakes. And even as an adult, I find like I'm actually quite good now. I will ask all the questions in the staff meeting, but not the ones that make the staff meeting long. Okay, not the ones that make, but I will ask. Not the ones that make the staff
I
meeting
know
long.
what you
Everybody,
mean.
not make me a meme. But no, I have got no shame,
Yes.
because just ask the question. Someone else is thinking it. So yeah, I've definitely noticed my students are more willing to ask the questions and also say and say things or suggest things. And I'm like, oh, that's a great suggestion. Yeah, that. Let's come back to that. Or well, let's go with that. So yes, definitely feel like students are more comfortable sharing with me and asking questions for sure. And it's a huge blessing in this journey, as I just dive more and more into inquiry.
That's amazing, amazing, Robynne. These kids are so fortunate to be
Thank you.
learning this with you. Like, I can only imagine. I'd love to interview these kids in like 5 years and be like, and see where they're at, because I'm sure it's making such an impact. And I want to know, like, so if I'm a teacher listening to this, right, and I haven't maybe heard of this approach, or I'm new to this approach, or I've wanted to try it, but I'm not sure where to start, what are maybe 2 or 3 ways that you would suggest that I could begin incorporating inquiry-based learning into my classroom, especially if my curriculum isn't, it's not like your curriculum where they encouraging this type of learning. What are maybe some small changes I could try, yeah, in my own class?
Okay, I would say, first of all, follow a hashtag inquiry on Instagram, on Facebook. Follow that. That's going to be a great start because you're just going to expose yourself to what inquiry is. Okay, you're just going to be able to see what it looks like in other classrooms and start to process that and start to sort of make sense of what that might look like for you. So that would be my first suggestion. Just observe, okay? And then my second suggestion would be something so simple as having a wonder wall in your classroom. So like finding a space, printing out the word wonder wall or getting your students to write wonder wall and having, that designated space in your classroom where students, if they have questions or wonderings, say, oh, well, that's a great question. Let's write that down on the wonder wall. And, make sure that you revisit that wonder wall from time to time. See if you can answer those questions as you sort of, as the students learn more and more. Now, maybe you don't have space in your classroom. I understand. Okay, you can also, print out questions and place them around your classroom. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to be one specific place. You could do, what do you wonder? How do you know? What do you notice? And you put that around your classroom, right? Maybe you don't have a printer. Write it out. Or I might say to you, start modeling questioning, right? So I think this whole idea of like, when you ask students like, oh, what's 5 + 5? And they say it's 10. So instead of just accepting an answer for face value, you go, well, how do you know? And you start to sort of, model that. Or students ask you a question, and you just put, well, what do you think? What do you think? How could we find that out? So I think, if anything, notice how you communicate and interact with your students and ask more questions. Model it, ask more questions. So you could definitely do that. And then I would say, start thinking about this idea of growth mindset. Yeah. This is something, right, you could do really, I mean, it's got everything to do with curriculum because it's got everything to do with learning and the way you think, but this idea of growth mindset, inquiry is not black and white. So you're going to have to be willing to make mistakes and learn new things. So you can start, noticing how your students speak. Even you hear them say, "I'm not good at that. This is really bad," and you just say, "Oh, you're still learning. You're not there yet." So just noticing your own language and the way that you interact with your students, or something as simple as reading a book. There are so many resources online, so many books you could read. I've got even here, I've got the Magical Yet, which I love.
Oh, and we'll put that in the show notes. Who wrote that? The Magical Yet?
This is Angela Ditterlizzi.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for sure. The Magical Yet. Yeah, that's amazing.
And after fall, and I don't care what anyone says. You might say, oh, my students are too old for this. They will, you know what? We're even as an adult, I know orientation when I joined Dalton. Yeah. When I joined them at orientation, our principal read us a book. He read us, what do you do with an idea? Which I actually ended up buying because I love it. But you know what? I sat there, this room of adults, we sat there and we ate it up. So read to your students. But yes, I would say read, growth mindset books, talk about making mistakes, talk about your own mistakes.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I think students feel so much more comfortable when you also acknowledge that you've made mistakes, and also just allowing them to also ask you questions and be like, so how do you know? How do you know, Miss, blah, blah, or ma'am, or, and being okay with, well, I know because then you model also the answering technique. Right? How you could develop your answer and explain your answer. I love that idea. Definitely. With growth mindset. So true.
Yeah, I've always, I think if anything, growth mindset has been sort of transformative in my approach to teaching and learning and my own mindset. So definitely would say we start with that. I would just say start with yourself.
Yeah.
Start with yourself. Yeah. The rest will come because you're going to have change. You're really going to have to embody it if you're going to really do it. So yeah.
Amazing. I love those ideas. Thank you so much for that. Those are fantastic tips. I especially love that one with hashtag inquiry. I mean, I did not even think of that, but that's brilliant. Because once you
Yeah.
train your algorithm to know that you're looking for that sort of thing, you're going to get more and more of it, right?
100%. And that's how I've stumbled upon like all these like fellow inquiry experts, these like
Yeah.
people who are like, I need to learn more. And like even LinkedIn is an outstanding platform, search it up,
Yeah.
connect yourself with the right people. It's gonna change your life. It's
Yeah,
gonna.
absolutely. Absolutely. That actually just made me think of, maybe look for other teachers in your community who want
Yes.
to learn about inquiry and implementing it and connect with them, right? Doesn't mean you have to connect just with teachers at your school. You could go out and even just look for other people. That's so great. That's such good
Definitely.
advice.
Yeah.
Okay, Robin, I'm going to flip it around now. What if I were a teacher who had experience, okay, with inquiry-based techniques? What are maybe two or three things I could try to now go to the kind of the next level of inquiry-based learning or teaching?
Okay, this is perfect. Okay, this is something I've started to do, and it's because I'm like moving. I feel like for me, I'm moving on to my next stage of sort of inquiry. This whole idea of co-constructing with your students, okay?
Mhm.
Um, Basically, if you think about, how teachers always use rubrics. Well, rubrics is one way of assessment, right? So it's this whole idea of co-constructing assessment rubrics with your students. So I'll give you an example so it just makes more sense. So with my grade fours, we're doing a nonfiction text. So I started off with basically giving them mentor texts, examples of nonfiction texts, and they started to dissect features that were in the nonfiction texts. So now they're aware, okay, there's an index, there's a glossary, there's diagrams, et cetera, et cetera. This is what it looks like. Okay, so then we took it to the next level and I showed them a rubric. I was like, this is a rubric. This is what teachers use to, look at your work and see, what are you good at? Where could you improve? And I showed them the, criteria. I said, well, this is what we need to achieve. And the criteria essentially is those elements that they took notice of in the nonfiction text. Oh, it's got a title. It's got subheadings. It's got paragraphs. It's got facts. It's got
Yeah.
a conclusion, and then we've got a point system. So together, we drew a rubric up together, but I modeled it. But then, so it's like this journey of co-constructing. And then now the next phase is they're going to go and they're going to, create their own rubric. I'm going to say to them, okay, you know what a rubric is? Go back to your your text features that you notice from the nonfiction.
Yeah.
And I want you to choose features that you want in your information report. Choose 5, put them in your criteria, in the things you want to achieve, and then you come up with a point system. Do you want to use a smiley face? Do you want to use a tick or cross? Do you want to use a point system? And then they're going to go ahead and create their information report. But they've just constructed their own, assessment. And and going back to us, me modeling the rubric, they actually used that rubric and they wrote a holiday report because we just got back from December break.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sat with them afterwards and, I helped them, guided them to actually use that rubric to mark their work. So
Love
they
that.
actually have this, so they have this understanding of actually how it works. So co-construct, it is a gnarly idea of like basically slowly releasing the reins, which is
Yeah.
terrifying. Trust me, it's I'm like, I need to have all the control. But Susan, oh my gosh. Rubrics are gonna look, and then they drew them as well. I was like, oh my gosh, some were so neat, some were messy, but
Of course.
they used them.
Yeah.
But also idea you could also co-construct a curriculum together. So you can have this initial idea of like, okay, we're gonna learn about dinosaurs, and I've got an idea of how it might end, but along the way, actually students are designing the curriculum with you. So that is sort of an advanced level of inquiry, but you can start to do it very slowly, even by the examples I've given you now.
Yeah.
So just that word co-construct. And then I would also say play around with your questioning routines. There's so many interesting routines you can use. There's like sort of this pyramid format where you look into like deep questioning and shallow questioning. There's the question continuum where you kind of, look at questions in terms of like questions being like skinny and thick, as in like, are they, close-ended or are they open-ended? So I would say, Trevor McKenzie, his book on question, this one, Questions Edition. You can see I've been dissecting it, but he's got a lot of ideas for different ways that you can sort of facilitate questioning in your class.
Okay, that was called inquiry mindset.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Love
Questions Edition. So it's like a whole book.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's good.
Questions.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've just been having loads of fun with it. And even at this point in my like inquiry journey, like, wow, oh my gosh, there's so many different ways that you can actually structure like questioning or show questioning. I mean, there's like spiral questioning. There's like so many different ways to approach it. So play around with your questioning techniques, and also in terms of like looking at how to build a question. Actually, Marisa, honestly, if you actually test your own ability to ask questions, it's really just not an easy thing. It's often like you often lean towards what. It's quite challenging to ask, different questions and deep questions and skinny questions and all those. And even this idea of like a driving question, because and I want to talk on this for a second because I'm doing a project-based learning with my grade sixes, and they had to recently create a driving question, which essentially like drives their entire unit from beginning to end. But this whole journey we spent like several lessons on them constructing a driving question. It's like a whole formula, and is there a verb? Do you have your problem? Are you going to include your solution? How are you going to start it? Is it open-ended enough? So yeah, I would say go deep into the question vortex.
I like that idea of you coming up, like you also practicing your own questioning techniques and seeing how, because you're absolutely right. Like as a coach, we do a lot on, like I research a lot on questioning, and it is incredible. Even being an English teacher for so long, there were questioning techniques that I had never used before, and ways to structure questions to just force a better answer out of someone or more information or something like that. And it really is something I think that teachers could focus on for themselves, like just to improve their own, just as lifelong learners, if you have that growth mindset, like, oh, this is cool. Like, let's see how it goes for me. Maybe I can learn something here.
100%. And I think also questioning directly correlates with reflection. And then if you are able to be reflective in your own practice, you are going to get better. So exactly. Actually, like it's not that easy. You really think, it's not that easy. It's so layered, actually.
Yeah, I think you're going to make a lot of people think with that comment for sure. All right, Robyn, some final thoughts. So we've mentioned Trevor McKenzie, but who are some other teachers or authors, maybe to follow or that you follow that also focus on inquiry-based learning?
Yes. Okay. So Kath Murdoch. So obviously Queen of Inquiry, Kath Murdoch, love her.
Nice.
She's amazing. Jessica Vance, I recently started following her on LinkedIn, actually. When I started following Trevor McKenzie, then I stumbled upon Jessica Vance. She does like visible learning walls, which is also fascinating. Yeah, really beautiful, really cool. And then also John Hattie, who I have been, he was sort of one of my go-tos right in the beginning of my journey. And he speaks on visible learning, and inquiry-based learning is all about, making your thinking visible. So John Hattie is awesome. And then again, find teachers in your network who are interested in the same thing and talk to them about it. Get geeky with other teachers. I love it. If someone wants to talk about inquiry or I want an opinion, I will find someone who I know might have the same interest and be like, well, what do you think? Or what are you doing? Walk into other people's classrooms. I love doing that. I'm always like, hello. And you might, this poor teacher's loony toony walking around the school. Hello. Anyway, they love me. Oh my God, I think they have to. There's like no choice. But
okay, well, you're easy to love.
But basically, I think if you walk into other teachers' classrooms and you see what they're doing, you might actually find that they're interested in the same thing as you. So
definitely
reach out to your inner network, and again, use Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. There's amazing communities out there. So, and you can even post anonymously if you feel shy to ask a question. And something you told me before, which was transformative for me, was DM the experts. DM the experts. They weren't always an expert.
Yep.
We're not, so DM. You got a question, even me, find me on LinkedIn, send me a message, ask me a question. So yeah, DM the experts, don't be shy.
I love that. It's true. Like, I mean, that's because it's absolutely, absolutely true. And don't be scared. The worst that could happen is they don't respond, but they might respond.
Yeah. And they usually do.
They usually do.
When I DM the experts, they've replied. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, cool. Stunning.
That's awesome, Robynne. Okay, so I want to talk for 1 second because a lot of the listeners don't know that we've been working together to help you with setting your goals of doing workshops and speaking to teachers around inquiry-based learning, because you are quite the expert now. And you have a big conference coming up in Guangzhou. Did I say that right? Guangzhou.
Yeah. Yes, you did.
Okay, perfect. And you're going to be doing a workshop there, which is so exciting. And I just want you to give our listeners, as though you're talking to the listener out there who maybe wants to take her teaching career that extra step, maybe wants to branch out into either doing workshops or trying to do something different to help other teachers. But maybe he or she is scared or not sure. How did you transform your mindset? Like, what tips could you give them? Yeah, I would love to hear that.
Okay, so I think, teachers, we put so much energy into our students. We believe so much in our students. We want them to achieve their dreams. We say to them, go out there and you can do anything you want. And, so I'm going to say to you, believe in yourself like you believe in your students. That's what I'm going to say to you. Because, your students, I tell my students, I did a workshop last year in November. I said to them, this weekend, I'm going to go talk to like a room full of teachers. I'm nervous, but I'm excited because I'm going to share what we're doing. And they're like, oh, okay, that's great. I mean, just, be that person you want your students to be, so believe in yourself like you believe in your students, and, make the stories for the 80-year-old you. One day I'm going to tell 80-year-old myself, I went to Guangzhou, China.
Yeah.
Did a big conference and I spoke about curiosity and inquiry, and I'll never regret a decision like that. So, go out there and experience life. It's joyful, and start saying yes. And it is scary, and it's going to be scary, and it's very, very hard, but it's so worth it. And I think, something that we've spoken about, Marisa, is naming that voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough, and telling them to bye-bye.
Yeah.
So my peanut gallery, I just say, sorry, peanut gallery, not the place for you, darling. So yeah, tell the peanut gallery to shush and go out and make your dreams come true.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my
Yeah, live your life. I think that's such great advice. Everything you said there, Robin, is just fantastic. I love that. I want to print all of that up. Like I love it. And believe in yourself like you believe in your students. That's amazing and so true. And and talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend as well. Sometimes we're so critical in ourselves. But if you have this goal and this desire to go out there and help other teachers, sometimes I also look at it's not always about me, but it's also about them, right? Like if I don't put myself out there to go and speak to these teachers, they aren't going to get the knowledge that I have.
yeah,
And that to me is more important. So it's shifting that mindset. And
exactly.
yeah, just like going along and setting your goals and sticking to them and knowing that you can do this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also this idea of like you don't need to go and change the whole world. Like even with this conference, maybe only one person will really feel inspired or learn something from my workshop. Then you know what? Fantastic.
Yep.
Because that one person go out there and make the changes and improve their students' lives and be empowered, and that's really what I want to do. So I think it's also just about like don't just, it's not so serious. Just have fun. Everywhere, we're all human beings at the end of the day. And yeah, just do it for that one person. Don't need to
Yes.
do it. Yeah.
Do it for that one person. You can you're changing one person's life. I mean, that to me is definitely worth it. Awesome, Robin. Thank you so much. And to finish off, what three things are you grateful for today?
Definitely grateful for you, Marissa. It's been, I mean, I just really, for me, I love surrounding myself with like-minded people. So I'm very grateful for you and this opportunity, and it's so fun. So thank you. And second thing I'm grateful for is definitely my friends and family and my kitty cats and just my home, So I'm so blessed, and not to be corny, but I truly am, and why not embrace that?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think I'm also grateful for my community, far and wide, all the educators out there. Grateful for them because truly, I am who I am today as an educator, as a facilitator, because of all those amazing teachers and mentors. That I've met along the way. So I'm so, so, so grateful for my professional community far and wide. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, I am so grateful for you, Robin, because I just love your energy. I love what you're doing. I love the connection that we've made. It's been just such a wonderful, it's just added so much value to my life. And I just want to really thank you for coming on to do the podcast today. And I appreciate you so much for helping these teachers expand their knowledge, not only my listeners and viewers, but all of the teachers that are getting your expertise in China. Like that's just incredible. And helping the students like build their confidence, the desire to learn. And I just want to put it out there. I wish you the most success and prosperity as you move forward with all of your endeavors with Guangzhou. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Thank you.